r/AskReddit. What is the most horrible thing you caught a classmate doing in school? Get a handjob in class. He got caught and said he was masturbating to save the girl from getting in trouble and he got suspended. This was in 8th grade. Edit. Happened in California. Edit story 2. Different girl gave a blowjob to her boyfriend in a stairway at our high school during junior year. Our campus security guard caught them and they both got suspended. They're still together. I watched one of my buddies back in sophomore year take out a little bag of whitish powder that had a yellow tint to it. I asked him what he was doing as he made a small line on the desk in the back of the classroom where we sat and he quickly sniffed it up his nostril. He let out a loud "whoa" as he finished the line and the whole class turned around and looked at us. Turns out it was ketamine. Sorry for the horrible spelling. Masturbating in the corner of the library to a magazine with a picture of Beyonce on the front. During a silent reading lesson with 30 other kids in the room. After being denied permission to go to the restroom, some guy pissed into a bottle and left it on his desk. He told his teacher it was Gatorade and asked her if she wanted some. Edit. This happened in Georgia. This one kid at my school had apparently been storing his cum for months in water bottles that he kept in his locker. Near the end of the year during one of the passing periods he brought out the cum bottles, pulled off the caps, and proceeded to sling them around, effectively striking everyone in the hallway with age locker cum. I was lucky enough to get hit in the arm. I have contemplated cutting it off. Once in school, I believe we were around 12-13. To avoid the nasty confusion of forms and years and grades, we were watching a documentary on the Holocaust. A girl in the back of the room screamed in disgust. The film was pretty graphic, so we all expected that to be the source, and I remember initially being annoyed at her reaction. Then a guy sitting perpendicular to her, we were around circular tables, also screams out of pain, gets up, and runs out of the room with his coke through the zipper of his trousers. He had been facing the screen whilst everyone else at his circular table effectively had to turn away to see. He evidently thought a Holocaust film was the perfect time to masturbate. He got caught, and in a panic tried to zip his trousers back up and got caught. One time in my high school choir class, the kid next to me taps me on the shoulder and says, "Check out my new wallet." I look over and he has his pants down and standing there is a fully erect penis. Not to mention a massive bush. The hair went almost all the way up the shaft too, which was pretty horrifying. His best friend is sitting next to him and he notices as well. Starts laughing and says, "What the duck, bro?" The friend then proceeds to grab his sheet music and swipes it towards the dong, giving it a paper cut. The kid with his dong out, normally a pretty calm, funny guy, becomes furious, stands up with his penis still out, and punches the kid square in the face. At this point everyone has noticed the commotion and they see a kid standing up with a hairy erection that has just punched his friend. My words can't describe the amount of confusion in that room. They eventually were both suspended for like 5 days or something. All the choir kids laugh about it now. Neither of them were allowed back into choir though. Up to this date, that is the strangest event I have ever witnessed. I don't know if it's horrible, but in middle school there was this couple that sat across from my table in the lunchroom. Every day she would give him a hand job under the table, which was very obvious from where my friends and I sat. I always wondered if the people they sat with knew. I mean, they had to, right? I guess he never finished because I don't know how you'd be able to look your friends in the eye while you're violently jizzing on the underside of the lunch table. Or worse, onto the open-toed sandals of the girl across from him. Edit. Missed some punctuation. I'm not a writer. Okay. Edit 2. Today I learned everybody was getting handies under the lunch table except for me. In a school in my neighborhood, jogging pants are banned because students would whip it out and start masturbating during classes in these pants. All together now. We had a spoiled donglord in my grade 9 class. We went on a field trip to a marine biology center. We were messing around, and he grabbed a starfish out of a live tank, held it to his shirt, turned to the girl he liked and said, "Hey, I'm a sheriff." What he didn't know was that when starfish feel they are going to die, they release all their jizz in an attempt to impregnate another random starfish. He proceeded to get a load all over his shit and yelled he peed on me. Our teacher had a wonderful time telling him it was not urine, but starfish cum. We forever called him Spummy, and when he cried to her teacher about the name, She told him to get used to it, as it was going to stick. I love that teacher. Forgive any spelling. This is from my phone. I went to a K-12 school because my town is tiny as hell. One day when I was in middle maybe high school, I was killing time from class taking a shit in the stall. Unfortunately, shortly after getting down to business an elementary class came in on a bathroom break. On this day, I learned just how much little kids love poop. I guess they liked when people didn't flush so they could see people's poop. They all ran in yelling I hope there's poop, and I wanna see some poop. Since there wasn't any in the other stall they thought the solution would be to see my poop, which caused them to riot and slam on the door yelling I want to see poop. I just wiped, called the rest of the remaining shit a loss, and slammed open the stall and ran away back to class. Didn't mention what had happened to my classmates. Too long didn't read little kids love poop. Kid jerked off in 8th grade math class, and finished. In class, he had 2 empty seats around, and was actually being pretty stealthy, until the moment of ecstasy when he began breathing real heavy. A girl noticed about 10 seconds before he finished, and she gave a very loud, startled, "What are you doing?" He was at the point of no return though, and just blew his load with his hands down his pants. He freaked out the minute he finished and the teacher started screaming at him. He ran from the room, but he left some cum on the door handle as he left. Obviously, he never lived it down. Every time I see the people don't forget thing from Superbird, I think of him. Pee down the slide. We were in 3rd grade. I slid down a slide in 3rd grade. The implications are clear. You know how bathroom stalls have those awkward cracks you can see through? I walked into the bathroom one day in school to see a guy pissing through that crack, attempting to spray the kid who was pooping and had nowhere to run. I have no idea why. I just turned around and left. Too long didn't read. Peeing on poopers. Edit. Another high school pooping story. I walked into the bathroom and 2 guys were discussing the logistics of 2 guys shitting in the same toilet. I joined in. We spent the next 10 minutes arguing about various angles. High school was weird. In 6th grade I caught a special needs kid telling on me for being in a fist fight. I was beating up a kid who had been picking on the special needs kid. Edit. For clarification, the fight was a last resort. I tried to ask the bully to stop. Back in 8th grade I was taking an exam in history and when I finished I looked around the classroom and saw one guy sleeping. After the exam my teacher tried to wake him up and no success so he called the paramedics. Turns out the guy had a heart attack and passed away right there. So what's the worst thing I've caught a kid doing in class? Being dead. One time I walked in on a good friend teammate shitting in the locker room showers. Then he kicked the poop against the wall and yelled poo poo. At the moment it was horrifying, but it made for a great story afterwards. Edit. Just to clarify for everyone, this was in high school. I was 18. My friend was 17. Dude, in my US Navy boot camp class, you had to take like Navy history classes etc. Found out in a letter that his GF had left him. Took off running right as we were going into class. Leapt onto a 3rd floor rail ledge thing. It was San Diego and classes all had outside entrances. No inside hallways. And then proceeded to do a swan dive onto the concrete 30 feet below with his ducking hands held behind his back. Dead instantly. Saw him dive but only heard him land. We were immediately pushed inside by company commanders and then locked down. When we got to head back to the barracks a little while later, they were using a fire hose to try to wash all the blood away. Very disturbing to 18-year-old me. One time a kid unzipped his pants and started ducking a rental trumpet, writing what looked like a bunch of names on a piece of paper. My best guess at the time was, it was a list of people who upset him or people he didn't like, or it could have been something more. I cannot say for sure if anything would have come from it. We all know teenage angst and anger, but at that time I thought that's what it was. Later on down the road the kid in question is in jail for shooting a sailor in the Navy in the head over an argument supposedly involving video games. This beachy girl I sat next to in 6th grade math did a silent fart just as I was bending down to get a calculator out of my backpack, which put me in the hit zone. Not that disturbing, but it was honestly the nuclear bomb of all farts. I started choking on the fumes and the entire class stopped the lesson to see if I was okay. I finally caught my breath. Told the teacher I had asthma. Not true. And was sent down to the nurse's office. I got a nap for the rest of the school day and the girl was always nice to me after that. Walking through the parking lot at the end of lunch, I saw someone in their car getting a blow. The guy looked at me and gave me the look as to say, be jealous because this is fantastic. In 8th grade, one of my female classmates was in the locker room blowing a classmate. Third classmate took a video of it and sent it around. She was proud of it. Edit. My most upvoted comment. Thanks guys. Edit 2. No child porn charges ever came about. I believe they got suspended for the rest of the year though. A friend of mine who is a principal had something similar happen in school. Video makes it around the school and to his own phone eventually. Pretty interesting situation when you have to suspend 2 people who you just recently saw perform oral sex. Caught a girl trying to hang herself in a stairway. That girl went on to become a porn star. Edit just figured out how to edit comments, hahaha. Well, her name in Alana Reigns. Not that attractive. This happened in a school in NW, Georgia. When I was in primary school, there was a girl who had very few friends and was a little odd. One day whilst I was sitting next to her, she lifted her dress and stuck her pen in herself and then looked at me dead in the eye and started clicking the pen with fury. I never sat next to her after that. Edit. To clear a few things up, she wasn't stabbing herself. She was inserting it. Also, we were about 10 years old at the time. In high school history class, the teacher was a great prankster but a bit of a nutcase and let us do basically whatever we wanted. One day a friend of mine took the teacher's coffee cup to the bathroom, came back with a pea coffee mixture and handed it to the teacher. My buddy even told him, I peed it that, and the teacher looks him dead in the eyes and enthusiastically says good, and drinks it. He probably knew once he'd tasted it, but he never let us know it. Just continued to sip it and look at my buddy and wink. Dominance was established. Too long didn't read, buddy pisses in teacher's coffee and tell him no ducks were given by teacher. He drinks it anyway. When I was in the 4th grade, we would take a field trip to the local swimming pool for swimming lessons every 2 weeks on Thursday for 2 hours. We were all way ducking psyched. Water slides and a lazy river ride filled with jets. Duck yes, thought 9-year-old me. My friend John and I were racing up the stairs of the water slide when I looked down at the lazy river and saw what I thought was a pair of brown swimming trunks with an air bubble floating around. It then floated into the bubble rapids where the water jets turned what turned out to be a turd into a brown shit plume that slowly filled the lazy river ride. The hot tub in the center of the river was filled with some girls from class. I shouted down to them to get out before the shit got to them. Everyone began screaming, rushing out of the pool water. It's all connected. It was chaos. Think Jaws after they realized there was a shark in the water. Later on it was confirmed by my friend Heather that it was the weird kid Jonathan, who later got the name Jonathan the Pool Shitter. People were equally disgusted and angry at him since our school was no longer allowed at the pool. He became a social pariah. From then on the name stuck. Eventually he learned to accept the nickname Pool Shitter and is now no longer fazed by it. Sometimes I'll look back and admire him for what he had to overcome. Bullies. Therapy. Godspeed Pool Shitter. Godspeed. The person wasn't seen, but somebody took a horrible, god-awful liquid shat in a big cooler filled with some soda and water. I was just in lunch and a few friends told me to come to the boys' locker room to see it. I don't know how they found it. I don't know who did it. I just don't want to know. Nothing special here. Just a dude who sat next to me every goddamn day watching a mix of standard cartoons and rape porn. Was at a Christian school. I didn't breathe a word to the instructor. I hated that place. I only decided to turn him on at the point where he was making direct eye contact with people, grunting and fapping away. Everyone knew but the instructor. We had no filters on our laptops. I didn't personally catch him. The teacher did. But it was happening right out in the open. It was in kindergarten. I can't remember if it was story time or what, but the whole class was sitting in a big circle on the floor. One of the girls in my class sitting across from me was wearing a dress or a long skirt and she was sitting next to a boy named Colby. But the girl had a sad and a shocked or alarmed expression on her face, and I'm pretty sure that's what gave it away to the teacher that something was wrong. But it turns out that Colby had either put his hand down right underneath her as she was sitting down, or he had worked his hand under her after she sat down. I'm not sure which, but either way, it resulted in him groping between her legs for probably a solid minute. It could have even been upwards of 5 minutes though. I'm not sure since I wasn't paying attention to her at first. I just know that after I noticed that something was going on, it wasn't much longer until the teacher asked what was happening and put a stop to it. Colby was removed from the class and I never saw him again. Or at least I thought that I had never seen him again. When I was in middle school, I was living in a trailer park. A new tenant moved in a couple of streets over from me. They had a kid my age, so I started seeing him out and about when outside playing. Something just felt off about the kid, but he started doing stuff with the same group of kids that I did, so our paths crossed quite regularly. One of our friends had a younger sister or cousin that lived with them, and she accused Colby of trying to touch her inappropriately. It was his word against hers, so there was no actual proof. But a few weeks later, the subject of kindergarten came up and I heard him mention that he went to the same one that I did. And then he mentioned his teacher's name. And then it clicked. It was him. That very same kid. I didn't tell any of the other kids in our group what had happened in kindergarten, but I did go to him after and let him know where I went to kindergarten at, what my teacher's name was, and then told a story about the time that a boy in my class stuck his hand under a girl's dress and molested her while we were all sitting in a circle. Then I stared at him for 10-15 seconds, then turned around and walked away. He never said another word to me and he stopped hanging out in our group of friends. A couple months later, he moved away. So after that, I really never saw him again. Not mine, but my sister's. She was sitting in class near this boy who was a little off. They were in 6th grade, and to help combat the odor of hormones, the teacher had asked all students to keep a little personal stick of deodorant in their desks for after gym and recess. One day they're sitting in class and my sister looks over and this kid is eating the deodorant from the stick and smearing it on his face. The teacher notices and asks what he's doing. He looks up, white surrounding his lips, his face glistening with axe, and he explains, "I'm trying to make friends." Edit. Unless Shonas is a mid-20s male who went to school in the middle of Wisconsin. Stop asking if it's him. A guy was caught peeing 4 feet from the urinal by another dude. That guy was freshman year gym class. My school had 2 gyms. One larger gymnasium and then a smaller down the hall from it. Everyone was just standing around in the main gym before class started when we heard strange noises coming from the gym down the hall. A couple of students and I went to investigate the noise. I was scared when I opened the door and saw 2 of the special ed kids going at it, making the weirdest noises ever. In 7th grade, a classmate of mine had cheated on my best friend's math test, which was worth 1/3 of our grade in that class. The worst part is he actually tried to blame it on my friend who was about to get in serious trouble because the teachers thought it was him. After him telling me this, I did something pretty ballsy. After class I went up to my math teacher and told him who really did it, but he still claimed that he knew exactly who it was. At this point I was so frustrated I quickly blurted out, "Why don't you make both students retake it and whoever gets the better score is the one who didn't cheat?" He agreed and said that both of them would take it after school, so I decided I would wait for him so we could walk home together. He simply walked out an hour and a half later and gave me a hug saying, "I don't know what I would do without you, dude." TLDR. Saved my best friend from getting expelled. In high school chemistry, we were mixing organic compounds in the lab. Teacher's instructions were to mix one compound, then dispose of it before starting the next one, and under no circumstances were we to mix them together. Well, a couple of troublemakers mixed all of them and it started spewing some really noxious fumes. It was the first time in my school's history that the chem lab had to be evacuated. In 10th grade I caught a classmate sitting alone in a rarely visited stairwell drawing something that looked like a rough building plan. I would do those occasionally, such as when designing games which involved building maps, and I figured he was doing something similar, so I started chatting with him. Neither of us really had any other friends prior to meeting, so we ended up hanging out basically every lunch hour for the rest of high school. Slightly less than 3 years later, shortly after HS graduation, he informed me that on the day we met, I'd interrupted his designing of the route he'd be taking in a school shooting, which he'd been planning because he'd felt like everyone else hated him. I am very glad that I took the time to stop and chat with that random lone high school kid way back then. He's been a lot better since then. and is doing pretty well for himself now. Edit. 2. Gold. Thank you for that, kind internet stranger. Well, maybe not caught in the sense that they didn't want to be seen, but during high school pay after my gym teacher refused to let anyone use the bathroom because the period just started and 15 minutes hasn't passed yet, me and the whole class watched a kid stand up, drop his pants, and piss with his penis spinning in a helicopter-like motion all over the gym. Needless to say, class was cancelled and he was suspended. I didn't get my sides back for that whole week. There was a kid in my school who was found to have a hit list. The crazy part was this was less than a month after Columbine and literally nothing happened to him. He got like a day of detention or something. Even crazier was the fact that the names on the list got leaked and kids that were on it did not give a shit. In fact, one kid was on it twice, 1st and 7th, cause he was so hated. The kid on the list twice then proceeded to beat the shit out of the kid and tell him he wanted the top 2 spots, not 1st and 7th. Again, this was mere weeks after Columbine, and I lived in an area with a lot of guns. High school is crazy and kids in high school are brave, stupid and crazy. I saw the guy fingering a girl next to him in the middle of class. Edit. Not saying names or anything like that. Edit 2. English class, and that's all the information I will say. Great. Story time. Weirdest. When I was in elementary school, one of my friends used to take out his shaft and stick it into the rubber cement jar that we all used for our arts and crafts projects. The teacher eventually caught on because she thought someone was constantly shoving their fingers in it. Grosses. When I was in high school, one of the quieter girls in my class would always take her small purse with her to the bathroom. Pretty suspicious. I should say right now that the bathroom is on its way to my class. So one day I am running late to class, and for some odd reason while I am passing the girls' bathroom I turned my attention to the purse girl who was next to the bathroom sink. I was curious and decided to see what she would do with her bag. Nothing. Instead, she reaches into her pants and pulls out a brownish red Maxipad. She then proceeds to pick off clucks of whatever the duck it was and places it into a small Tupperware. I never told anyone. Bravest. I once witnessed a kid answer a math problem before raising his hand. In college, a bunch of us would get together for poker night every week in someone's college apartment. One week, my friend S brought his friend R along, stating that they know each other from back home and that he wanted to help R make some friends. R was definitely dorky looking, short, big nose, big glasses, t-shirt tucked into gym shorts, extremely hairy black back hair spewing out of his shirt collar, etc. But he was nice and friendly, so we accepted him into our poker night traditions. Around the 3rd week of him joining our get-togethers, I ended up sitting next to him. I noticed that he kept putting his cards down and kind of fidgeting under the table and breathing heavily, so I glanced over to see what he was doing. No, he wasn't masturbating. He was sticking his hands down his gym shorts, playing around with his junk, then placing his fingernails right up against his nose and sniffing them heavily. He then would put his hands down the butt area, scrape a sample of his butthole fecal matter, and do the same sniffing thing. Sometimes he'd even use a poker card to get said fecal matter and smegma out of his fingernails. So gross. Bro, you made it to the end. You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content. It's free and that's a great price.